Namaste, my name is Richa, and I'm currently a junior at Plano West High School in Texas. And my goal was to do research on why Bhakti is applicable today and significant in Kalyug. And while I was researching, I wanted to find the best way that Bhakti can be accepted, and I found that modern science was the way to do so. So I focused on Bhakti Yoga in the first place. Well, Bhakti is not seen in the same light as Jnana Yoga or Karma Yoga, such as ISKCON. Let's take ISKCON for example. So they are seen as very cult-like, which is obviously not very true. And because they're so focused on Bhakti Yoga, it's a very widespread organization throughout many cultures and religions. And that's why today I intend to show that Bhakti Yoga is still highly relevant today in Kali Yuga. So, what are some of the traits that we see today in Kalyug? Well, very common ones are anxiety, depression, fear, greed, anger, and all these things. And this correlates to the Bhagavad Gita, saying that from anger, delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When the memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost, and when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool, in which we are right now. So, speaking of materialism, a more specific common material bondage that most of us have is to social media. A study by Emily Weinstein at Harvard shows that social media and teen anxiety are very linked because the pressures of social media affect teens. These snapshots of other people's lives really impact these teens and make them feel insecure and lonely. And another thing is that when the iPhone 10 came out, sleepiness and loneliness were increased in teens. And all of this provides the presence of Maya and the material world as a result, and resulting to depression and anxiety to be true. So, can Bhakti offer a solution? Yes, it can. It can help us find a way out of this material bondage. So, therefore, my thesis is modern science can show how Bhakti Yoga has significant applications in tackling challenges today in Kalyug. So, Bhakti and Kalyug, right? So, what is that all about? So I just want to throw this out there that we should definitely read the Bhagavad Gita in Kali because it's the essence of all the other Vedic scriptures and Vedas and all those other great things. But because most of us do not have the time and priority of Bhagwan and becoming conscious, we should read it. And it said in chapter 2, text 47, that most of the population is foolish and not adequately educated enough to understand the Vedanta philosophy. The best purpose of the Vedanta philosophy is served by inoffensively chanting Bhagwan's name. And when we're talking about materialism, on Belk's scale of materialism, Richens, in his study in 1987, found that more materialistic people are more dissatisfied with their standard of living. And then in a later study by Richens and Dawson in 1992, showed that materialism is negatively correlated with life satisfaction, such as family, friends, fun, income, and just life in general. And let's talk about the happiness that these tangible objects and experiences bring. So, traveling or buying a book that brings happiness to someone. But how long does it actually last? Just as we find something that makes us upset or someone does something that we don't like, everything good suddenly goes away. And this is one of the main factors of Kali that we tend to look at the bad instead of the good. And all of this proves that all these tangible objects and experiences only hold to be short term happiness. And these tangible objects are just the beginning of a new challenge. Once we use Bhakti Yoga to move these obstacles aside and destroy these obstacles, the path becomes so much easier to experience, and the challenges are much more easier to handle and face. And once we're talking about materialism and self-esteem, Chaplin and John did a study on children that tied these two together, in the sense that material values are a product of insecurities and unmet needs. This means that children who don't have a supportive family and background and environment, these children tend to be more insecure, leading them to attach themselves to material things and ideas such as toys, fame, money, in order for them to increase their sense of self-esteem. And how can we identify, like, how do I know what is real and what is materialistic? Well, we know that bhakti helps break this material bond, so it obviously can't be material. But to say, for example, let's take jap. Jap is done with mara, which is a physical thing. Most people find it to be materialistic just because it's physical. And that's not true, because anything regarding bhakti or bhagwan is never material, as said in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, text 2 commentary. So we know what is material, but we need to get past this material bondage. So in order to suppress this, bhakti needs to be reformed. This is seen in chapter 2, text 44 of Bhagavad Gita, that says, in the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to Bhagwan does not take place. So no materialism. You're closer to Bhagwan. If you have a lot of materialistic aspects in your life, then you're probably not going to get good bhakti or closer to Bhagwan. So how is bhakti relevant as a modern science? Well, there are many studies that prove this effectiveness of bhakti of modern science. One example is Gail Desbordes from Harvard, and she did a study which she told a group of clinically depressed people to meditate every day. After 2 weeks, she took fMRIs of these people's brains, and found that the amygdala, which is responsible for fear, emotion, and anxiety, to actually reduce in size. And she said that this is the most effective solution. And this can also be correlated to Bhagavad Gita that says meditation frees the self from anger, sadness, and fear, which is true. And Shiva Varambali explains multiple studies explaining the effects of bhakti on psychiatric and neurological disorders. For one, there was a study in Bengal that took people with MDD and dysthymia and told them to do yoga, and their health improved 76%. And this can be again correlated to chapter 6, which says, in this chapter, the Lord explains the process of the eightfold yoga system is a means to control the mind and senses. And this is true because MDD and dysthymia are both mental disorders in which the brain is really scattered and disorganized. Another study that Shivrama Varambali explained was that for schizophrenia, which there was one group who was told to perform yoga, and then the other group who was told to do normal exercise. And the group that performed yoga had great improvement on their PANS, which is positive and negative syndrome scale. And he concluded that yoga has significantly better effects than most modern day treatments. And this study was very similar to the one that I just talked about that Shivrama Varambali summarized. And this one was done in Haridwar, India, that took 32 people with anxiety and depression from the Patanjali Ayurvedic Hospital. These were selected based off of Cohenji's formula and divided them into two groups. One was yoga, who did Om chanting, meditation, and devotional songs, and then the control group, who did nothing. And after assessing their anxiety and depression using the hospital anxiety depression scales using SPSS version 25, after 3 months, it showed that there's a significant difference in the anxiety and depression levels. And this is shown in the bar graph. So as you can see, the yoga group had a much greater difference in the levels of anxiety and depression than the control group, which was expected, but for the purposes of the study, it was proven. And in terms of the yoga group, the meditation helped depressed patients become cheerful and happy in just 10 minutes. And then instant relaxation was also a result of the meditation for anxiety levels. And then the devotional songs helped also reduce anxiety levels to a great extent. So overall, the pair mean values show clear decrease in anxiety and depression levels. And these are both mental illnesses that, when taking medications, are not very useful. So Bhakti Yoga played a significant role in reducing the anxiety and depression of these people. So more specifically, I want to go on to jap, which is a very common form of bhakti. And from a paper, jap reduces materialism, the conclusions can be made that jap makes you focus on your breath, your posture, and most of your senses, because it does engage most of your senses. And when doing actual jump, the beats provide a sense of stimulation because it is a constant stimuli triggering the multisensory response. And that feeling of constant stimuli is soothing. That's why we engage all of our senses while doing jump, because it also brings us a sense of satisfaction. Another part of the paper explains that the various ways that jump and Mara produce inner peace. And for example, each time you do jump, the sense recognition of the touch when you perform jump becomes more solid, meaning that it becomes more meaningful each time and you feel closer to Bhagwan. And the emotions that are attached to jump each time you do it allows for a sense of concentration and calmness. And because jump in Kalyug is performed to match the rhythm of the cyclical time of the Hindu cosmos, meaning based on our calendar and when we fast and certain festivals, for example, it allows our bodies to match the environment. And when people say one with the environment, it's truly important because it's providing us with a controlled mind and a sense of inner peace. So these are some brain images. This one shows the decrease in brain activity, and then this shows that also change in brain activity and the significance of it. As this one is, the one on the left is a little bit less darker, and the one on the right is more darker. So, for example, a study in Lycoping University in Switzerland did a study where they used brain imaging technology to look at people's brain during jump, and they found that the default mode network, which is activated when the brain is not focused, to suppress. And this correlates to chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita that says, in the age of Kali, the Sankirtana Yagna is recommended by the Vedic scriptures, and in chapter 12 it says, in the age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance in chanting Bhagwan's name is bhakti. There's no other way, there's no way, other way, there's no other way. Sanskrit effect is when a neurologist took Vedic pundits and used MRIs to determine the effects of the Sanskrit text and mantras. They found that there is 10% more gray matter. The right hippocampus had also more gray matter for verbal memory. There is also thickening of the right cerebral cortex regions, which are associated with speech prosody and voice recognition. And they essentially thought that this might prevent early onset and decrease severity of Alzheimer's. So mental health is a big factor of Kali. So how does bhakti really affect mental health? So the relaxation response was found or discovered by Dr. Herbert Benson, who's a cardiologist and the founder of the Mind and Body Medical Institute at Massachusetts General Hospital in Boston. And he found that meditation promotes better health, especially in individuals with hypertension. And people who meditate every day or regularly have lower stress levels, increased well-being, reduction in their pressure levels and resting heart rate. And also it could be used as a therapy for people with OCD. And in terms of just the name of chanting in Bhagwan, the radiant energy from chanting Bhagwan's name destroys the impressions of the subconscious mind, whether it be subconsciously or consciously. And the bhav that we have when chanting Bhagwan's name embodies emotions such as respect, love, and devotion for Bhagwan. And there are increasingly progressive, while undesirable emotions, on the other hand, diminish and kind of are eliminated from the mind. And when we're engaged daily through these negative talks or negative experiences throughout the day, and when we come home or do japa or chanting, it kind of relaxes us and purifies our speech and our mind. So in conclusion, Bhakti has clear applications of dealing with challenges in Kalyug, such as these psychiatric and neurological disorders. And as we saw, many researchers focused on the transcendental effects of japa. So what does it do for us spiritually, right? And brain imaging and study groups such as the yoga and the control group pointed out the tangible effects of bhakti on the mind and body. So it calms us, helps us concentrate. And then this was something I found from Srimad Bhagavatam that pulls together most of the points I made throughout this presentation. Krishna Varnam Dusha Krishnam Sango Pangasta Barsadam Yajna Sankirtana Prayer Yajanti Hi Sumedasa means in this age of Kali Yuga, people who are endowed with sufficient intelligence will worship Bhagwan, who is accompanied by his associates by performance of Sankirtana Yajna.